Dear students, let us begin with the third part of the lesson on war between India and China in 1962. Sino-Indian War in 1962. The beginning of Chinese military intervention into Indian territory could be traced in 1954. In June, Chinese forces entered the Barahoti area. In 1956, some armed forces entered Indian areas west of the border Sipki Pass. In 1958, they occupied the Kurnak port about 1.5 miles within Indian territory in Ladakh. In July 1959, Chinese armed forces entered the Spangur area. In August, Chinese forces crossed the Tagla Ridge, Kinjimin and Migitun area in Northeast Frontier Agency. In November 1959, they entered 60 miles west and another 40 miles within western Ladakh by September 1962. With their attacks in September and October 1962, they occupied another 2,500 square miles of Indian territory in Ladakh and Nepal area. From then, the conflict between India and China took a serious turn. Chou Enlai, who was willing to accept the McMahon line as the border line between India and China in 1956, changed his stance. China adhered to the stance of the maps being those of the national government of Chiang Kai-shek and assured India that it would be rectified. Nonetheless, it did not do so. It was not prudent to trust a country which indicated a large chunk of Indian territory as its own. Nehru should have realized the dangers surrounding the border dispute in 1950 itself when China sent troops to Tibet and forcibly occupied it. India recognized Chinese sovereignty over Tibet. Nehru, in retrospect, appeared to have miscalculated. India, which voiced its protest against the United States activities in Korea and Vietnam, did not protest when China attacked Tibet in October 1950 and definitely erred on this account. The stance that it adopted against Chinese attack over Tibet indicated that it was not keen about protecting Tibet, but was more concerned about Chinese entry into the United Nations. This was indeed an ironic situation. Over the years, Chinese incursions have continued to rise along Indian border. China has seized Akshay Chin by building a road through the territory and has also endorsed the maps that claim all of what is Arunachal Pradesh and large parts of Assam as parts of China. The maps published by China were also copied by the Soviets, thus strengthening China's claims over Indian territories. Despite repeated requests by India to maintain tranquility at the border, China continues to infiltrate Indian territorial spaces and regions. India in 1961 deployed its troops along its border. China perceived this as an intention of India to revert to pre-colonial status of maintaining Tibet as a buffer state between India and China. On 20th October 1962, China's People's Liberation Army invaded Ladakh in India and across the McMahon line in the then Northeast Frontier Agency. The 1962 war took place in two regions of India, the area of Akshay Chin in Ladakh and in Arunachal Pradesh. In military words, these sectors are called theatres of operation. India had appealed to the United States for help with ammunition supplies, but the latter chose to remain neutral. American neutral position served three purposes. It cleared the way for China to start preparation for the military option to supposedly settle accounts whenever an appropriate opportunity would arise. China felt emboldened to occupy more territory beyond its official claims in 1956. It led to China's inflexibility in the negotiation process, which could have even blocked the possibility of any last-minute resolution of the boundary. Thus, although US-China relations did not improve until the deterioration of Sino-Soviet relations in the 1970s, initial undercurrents of understanding can be seen to have flowed between them. The United States' supply of arms first to Pakistan and then its statement of neutrality in case of a war between India and China over border confrontations both worked to India's considerable disadvantage. It resulted in sufficient loss, first at settling boundary disputes through negotiations with Pakistan over the Kashmir region and then in avoiding a war with China along the contested regions. As for India, its initial hesitation to believe that China would go on to fight a full-scale border war against it led India to being underprepared. India continued to be under the illusion that China's newly formed government had several worries to tackle and its military entanglements in Burma, Korea and Tibet precluded any possibility of it waging a full-fledged border war against India. However, the war began in October 1962 and India faced a critical shortage of troops, ammunition and supplies due to its lack of arrangements for the border conflict. In several places, the Chinese troops had cut off communication cables, which led to Indian troops being unable to remain in contact with each other. Repeated attacks from the rear of the defences led to many dead and wounded on both sides. In Assam, the Chinese forces attacked Tagla on 20th October and Walong on 21st October 1962 and captured portions of these regions with their superior artillery and number of troops. After a 33-day struggle, India was completely routed by the Chinese army. By 18 November, China had reached close to Tejpur, a frontier town in Assam, and stopped their advance at that point and declared a ceasefire. The war lingers as a humiliating memory in Indian minds till today. After the 1962 debacle, India started serious military modernization. The Chinese perhaps decided to launch this attack due to the following reasons. Being a large country, China could not accept India as the largest democracy not only in South Asia, but in the whole Asian region. Its desire to assert its supremacy in Asia, its desire to stifle the democratic experiment in South Asia. The weak Indian defense was an opportunity to be seized upon. India's mild response to the Chinese invasion of Tibet may have emboldened China to take military action. Let us summarize what we have discussed so far in this lesson. The Sino-Indian War acquired intense criticism of Nehru and led to the resignation of the then Defence Minister V.K. Krishna Menon. Further, on a larger geopolitical level, China became another adversary for India, second to Pakistan. The conflict led India to become deeply skeptical of China's rise in world affairs in general and of its economic and security ties with South Asian countries in particular. This fear was a major factor for Indian introspection in considering serious military modernization. The Sino-Soviet split in ties in the 1960s led to a closer alignment between India and the Soviet Union, followed by closer relations between China and the United States in the 1970s as carefully crafted by Nixon-Kissinger diplomacy. Further, Chinese fear also led India to focus and build its nuclear weapons program. Thus, the Sino-Indian War adversely affected India's spirit, which the latter had tried to lift through winning conflicts with Pakistan in 1965, 1971 and 1998. The Sino-Indian War remains a significant historical event in India's national consciousness. It influenced India's strategic thinking, military posture and foreign policy for decades, with lasting implications for the region's geopolitics. The war also contributed to the ongoing border dispute between India and China, which remains unresolved, leading to periodic tensions and border skirmishes. I hope you learnt about the India-China War in 1962. We have concluded our lesson. Thank you.